Okay, so today we're going to just do the first day of 6-4, and we're going to learn how to graph the reciprocal functions of sine and cosine. So our first one, and I've taken away the graphs. I was finding that the boxes were a little bit confusing. I think I'm going to do the exact same thing on the test. Now I know in the review I've got a grid there. If you want to just do it off to the side or white that out and then just do it freehand like I'm doing, feel free, because I think the boxes are getting a little confusing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set up my coordinate plane here. Now for this, I'm going to put in the 90-degree breakdown here. So I'm going to have my normal, it's going to go by 90 degrees, so pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. I'm going to go the same way in the other direction. I'm going to put negatives in front of all these numbers over here. And then lastly, negative 2 pi. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph the sine function. I'm going to do that one in red. So we've already done this. We did this on day 1 of 6-3. So I'm going to graph the y equals sine of x. So if you recall, sine starts at 0, 0. From there, it goes up to 1. Then back down to 0 for pi. For the 3 pi over 2, it's here at the negative 1. And then back again at the 0. So it's oscillating up and down between 1 and negative 1. So this is the right side. And then I'll create the left side. So we're going to go down here, back up to the axis, up above, and then back down to here. So this was the sine graph that we saw on day 1 of 6-3. Again, remember that the reciprocal of sine is the cosecant. So remember that back when we did this in chapter 5, remember I told you all of the values for sine need to be numbers or decimals or fractions. So they're going to be numbers that are in between 1 and negative 1. You guys remember that? They're all fractions. And then the cosecant, that's always going to be numbers that are going to be greater than 1 or less than negative 1. So they had to be reciprocals, basically. So, having said that, we need to figure out that it's going in the opposite direction. Now, also remember, if I were to do the sine of pi, remember on my axis here, this is pi over 2, this is pi, and over here the order pair is negative 1 comma 0. So remember sine uses y, so sine of pi is 0. Remember if I were to do cosecant of pi, that's really 1 over y. So that would mean I would be doing 1 over 0. What happens when there's a 0 in the bottom? Is that possible? No, right? It's undefined. Okay, so remember that wherever it's touching the x-axis, it doesn't exist. It's undefined. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in asymptotes through all of the points that are on the x-axis. So I'm going to draw an asymptote here. Here, actually I'm going to do it with highlight. Here, here, the y-axis is 1, pi, and 2 pi. So at each one of those zeros, there is a vertical asymptote. My graph cannot go beyond that. So it's like my wall, my stopping point. So now remember, since it's reciprocals, to create the cosecant graph, I'm just going to go over here. So instead of going down, my graph is going to go up, and it's going to skim along the asymptotes. Over here, from that point, the negative pi over 2, make it go down. The positive pi over 2, going up. The 3 pi over 2, down. And I've just created my graph. Now, you can, if you want to go back and erase the red line, because that is the sine graph, or if you just want to just sort of scribble it out and know that the only thing that represents the cosecant of x graph is the blue. Yes?
How do you find the asymptote? Like for this?
Wherever the points, those red dots, are hitting the x-axis, all the zeros.
Oh, so it's always going to be like that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're going to do the same thing for the secant graph. But we're going to graph the cosine first, and then wherever it's touching the x-axis, that's when where we'll draw in our asymptotes. So let's try that. Everybody good on this graph? Okay, so again, I'm just going to draw this out. I'm going to label it the same way. So pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Because remember, the cosine graph completes a full cycle in 2 pi and in 0 to negative 2 pi. And my graph is going by 90s. So we're going to go ahead and put in the cosine graph now. And I'm going to do that in red. So I'm graphing what we did on day 1. Y equals the cosine of x. So I'm going to start, the cosine graph starts at 1. It doesn't start at the origin. So my first point is here. From the 1, it goes down to 0. Then down here to the negative 1. Back up to the 0. And then back up to the 1. So it goes from here to here to here to here. I can do the left side. Down to negative pi over 2. Down here. Back up. Back up. And I'm done. So that is 2 full cycles. Now I need to draw in the asymptotes. So just like I did for the sine graph, wherever I have a red circle on the x-axis, whenever I'm looking for the zeros, I'm going to draw in my asymptote. So I have an asymptote here at the negative 3 pi over 2. Got another one here at negative pi over 2. This time, the axis isn't one of them, the y-axis, but this one is, and this one is. And now to create your graph, you're going to go here to the points, make it go away, skim along those asymptotes. Now, we also have these ends that we need to take care of. So what you could have realized that, oh, we got this one up here too. And then over here, really what we would have been this. But remember, our cycle stops here at the 2 pi. So I don't need to show the left side. I don't need to show this one. because my cycle stopped here at negative 2 pi. So this is why I only showing half of that U shape. Same thing here.
Please report student services. Blake Cover, please report student services. Thank you.
Okay, so again, this one stops here at 2 pi, so this is why I'm only making half of my U shape. I don't need to show the other side because my cycle stopped. So that is the graph of the reciprocal of cosine. Again, if you want to erase the red, you can, or you could just take your pencil and show that it needs to go away. This next one, we're going to change the speed. And then the last example, we're going to move it. We're going to shift it over. Everybody good on this basic graph of the secant? Okay, let's go ahead and try to speed it up. So again, this is going to be my amplitude. So I'm just going to label it on my y-axis. This is going to be my speed change. Okay, I'm going to change the length of the period. So again, remember to change the period. You're going to do 2 pi divided by this b or this number in front of x. So really what I'm doing here is 2 pi over 1 divided by 1/2, which is multiplied by the reciprocal. So now it's 4 pi. So it's going to take me 4 pi instead of 2 pi. So it's taking me longer. So again, I need to find the 4 points. So I do 4 pi times 1/4, 4 pi times 1/2, 4 pi times 3/4. I get pi. Here I get 2 pi. And here I get 3 pi. So these are going to be my new points. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm again going to draw the original cosine graph, but with the speed change and with the amplitude in there. And then I'm also going to, do the reciprocal, making it go up and make those U's and those N shapes. So let's go ahead and draw the graph. When you're going to draw it like this, just make sure you try to space out your spaces about the same distance. Mine are a little off, but as best you can. Okay. Okay, so my amplitude is 2, so I'm going to label that in here. So my first graph that I'm going to do in red is going to be, I'm going to include the new amplitude and the new speed. So I'm going to graph the cosine, and I'm going to slow it down, but it's basically still the same motion. Okay, so for cosine, I don't start at 0, 0. I'm starting at my amplitude of 2. From there, I'm going to, I guess I should label these. This is pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. Over here, negative pi, negative 2 pi, negative 3 pi, negative 4 pi. Okay, so first we're going to create the cosine graph. So it starts on 2. At pi, it goes down to 0. At 2 pi, down to the negative 2. At 3 pi, back to the 0. And at 4 pi, we're back up here where we started. So down, down, up, up. I'm going to make the other side. Go down again. Back up to the 0. And back up to here. So that is the cosine graph. that's been slowed down and added in an amplitude of 2. So now to remember to make the secant graph, we're going to add in the asymptotes. So we know like they're like our guidelines or our walls. So I'm going to go ahead and draw an asymptote here. I'm going to do it in blue. Asymptote at negative 3 pi. Another one here at negative pi. All the places where it's touching the x-axis. And now I'll go in and draw the graphs. So again, up here I don't need to make the full U because my cycle ended at the negative 4 pi. So let me erase this side. So it's going to go up, skim along that asymptote. Over here it goes down and away, up and away, down and away, and then again only part of it. And that would be the graph that's been slowed down and then given an amplitude of 2. Both of these sides are symmetrical. All right, one more where we're going to shift it. So we're not going to be changing the speed. We're just going to change where we start. So I'm going to go back to my original labeling of the pi over 2, the pi, all of that. So this is the cosecant. It's the reciprocal of the sine graph. So I'm going to originally graph it, sine of x minus pi. I'm not changing the speed here. Again, remember, this means shift it to the right pi radians, or 90 degrees, or 180, sorry. So let's go ahead and graph it. I'm going to leave the same original labelings here. Pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi, and then I need to add one more because remember, I'm shifting over. Actually, I need to add probably 2 more. Let's see, 1, 2, no, 1 more. So in order to figure out what 90 degrees is past 2 pi, I'm doing 2 pi plus pi over 2. So this is really going to turn into 4 pi over 2. So this next one is 5 pi over 2, just by adding pi over 2. The other side, yes?
Don't you need one more?
Let's see, I might need one. We'll see how it goes. Let's see. So I'm starting here. So this will be 1, 2, 3. Yes, I do. Let me add one more. And that's actually going to become 3 pi. Because if I do 5 pi over 2 plus pi over 2, that gives me 6 pi over 2, which when I simplify it, it's 3 pi. All right, so now I have enough on the right side. On the left side, since I've gone 2 more over, I could take 2 away from this left side. So I just need negative pi over 2 and negative pi. So let's go ahead and put in the original sine graph first. Now, notice it's going to be a negative sine graph. So normally it starts at 0, 0 and then goes up. But because it's negative, I'm starting at pi, and instead of going up to 1, I'm going down to negative 1. Because of the negative in front of the word cosecant. So I'm going to come down here. Then I'm going to go back up. And then up again. And then back down again. So down, up, up, up. So four sections or 4 intervals here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I need to go 4 backwards. So here is the first one. And then back down here. And then here. And then back to the x-axis. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. So this is the original sign. And again, it's not symmetrical this time because I shifted it over to pi. So now I need to draw the reciprocal. So this is easy now. I just draw in the asymptotes. So one's here, one's here, 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 and here. So now I just find all those red points and make them go up and away or down and away. So down here, up here, down here, and up here. So we have 2 full cycles here. Remember the starting point was pi. So over here is the 1 full cycle, and then the other cycle is from the pi to the negative pi. We did not change the speed. They both completed their cycle in a length of 2 pi. Because if you notice, this one went from pi to 3 pi, took 2 pi cycle, and this went from positive pi to negative pi. So that is the reciprocals. So on Monday, we will learn the tangent. The homework listed on the next slide, there's 3 problems, plus you have the other 4 from yesterday, so you have 7 problems to complete over the weekend. Tonight, I want you to focus on studying for that quiz. Again, if you have any questions that you encounter tonight, send me a screenshot of the problem and I'll email you back. Again, I am here in the morning, so if you do have last minute questions, you can see me in the morning. And that is 6-4, day 1, and the 2 reciprocal trig functions.